understand Aristotle's virtue ethics, we have the doctrine of mean, or the golden mean. It is an understanding that a virtue lies between two vices. Once we have a knowledge of this, we are in a better position to act in a virtuous way. Aristotle claims that any extreme is a vice, and virtue lies in between these two extremes. So let's take the moral virtue of courage. This is a virtue that sits in the middle of two extremes. On one extreme is the vice. We can say it is the deficiency. We can say it's the deficiency of the virtue. So a deficiency of courage is cowardice. On the other extreme, we can say that this is the excess of the virtue. So the excess of courage would be recklessness or being foolhardy. So the virtue of courage lies in the middle of the two vices. So using our practical wisdom, we can assess the situation, and with the golden mean, we can determine the virtuous action. So let's focus on courage. Imagine you are an ancient Greek soldier defending the city walls from the enemy. You are guarding alone, and you see 20 enemy soldiers approaching in the gate. Now what do we do? If you run out and face the enemy alone, this is reckless. You are outnumbered and you will certainly die. On the other hand, if you pack up your things and quietly leave, this is cowardice, another vice. Courage would be to inform the other guards, and if enough heed your call, you stand and fight and defend your city. We can take another virtue of Aristotle, ambition. Working too much, not seeing your family and friends, and neglecting everything for your career is a vice. On the other hand, not working at all would be lazy, another vice. Ambition lies in the middle, the golden mean. And finally, Aristotle claims that aside from following our practical wisdom and the golden mean, we must follow the examples of other virtuous people. We must study them and learn from them.
Aristotle is interested in finding what all our lives essentially and ultimately aim to it cannot be. Wealth, such as things like houses and cars. Fame and honor, they are just instruments for feeding one's ego. Aristotle names the chief goods for the human person as happiness or eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. For Aristotle, happiness is self-sufficient, final, and attainable goal. Self-sufficient because it makes human life complete. Final because it is desired for itself and not for the sake of something else. Attainable goal because it is not more theoretical construct but something that one actually does practically. Happiness, above all, seems to be of this character, for we always choose it on account of something else. Yet honor, pleasure, intellect, and every virtue we choose on their own account. We choose them also for the sake of happiness, but nobody chooses happiness for the sake of these things. Eudaimonia, the chief good, is sought for its own sake, perceived into be instrumental in one's flourishing, health, wealth, and power. According to Aristotle, eudaimonia is an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. The chief good is not archived by one grand act, one big question, for it is something one constantly strives for. Also, according to Aristotle, one swallow does not make a spring, nor does one day. And this way, one day or a short time does not make someone blessed and happy either. These external goods contributed to the attainment of one's happiness. The one is physical appearance. Secondly, good friends. third, good family, and the last one is proper education. The soul. Aristotle postulates that happiness is an activity of the soul. For Aristotle, the soul is the part of human body. The soul is composed of both rational and irrational elements. The rational part is divided into two parts: speculative, which is response for knowledge; practical, which is responsible for choice and action. The speculative part is concerned pure thoughts and is essentially the base of contemplation. The practical is in charge of action and the practical determination of the proper means to attain a specific end. The irrational part of the soul has two parts, the vegetative and appetitive. The vegetative part is in charge of the nutrition and growth of human being. The appetite part, according to Aristotle, shares in the rational elements of the soul. For example, how people define happiness. Let's watch this video.
I'm genuinely happy. I'm happy. And I'm not happy just because of the success. The success acts as a bonus. I'm happy because I truly know the definition and the feeling that comes with happiness. I truly know it. I felt it. I felt it when I said, yo, what really makes me happy? I look at my wife, I go, yo, I didn't have the family shit when I was coming up. Yo, I got one. I got one. Look what I done did. Look what I built. These people depend on me. I provide for these people. That makes me happy. That makes me happy when my daughter comes up. Dad, you're not only my dad, you're my best friend. Yo, I'm happy. That's my world. So everything else from the outside that comes in, you're throwing shit at a bubble that can't be popped.
Virtue, the mean, and practical wisdom. The Greek word for virtue is arete, which means excellence. By excellence, the Greek thought of how a thing fulfill its functions. For instance, if a knife cuts excellently, is sharp, durable, and dependable for different tasks, then may be said that is an excellent knife. It does what it's supposed to do in the best possible way, fulfill its essence as a tool for cutting and slicing. It's maybe then called virtue knife. Be virtue, in other words, is to be exhibit one's capacity to fulfill one's essence or purpose in a such way that one's potentiality as particular being may be said to be actualized in the most excellent. This is how Aristotle view what is virtue. What is excellence for Aristotle? For him, being excellence, if you are a person doing something good, you have to do it in a best way possible. It should be in an excellent way possible in terms of how you deal with other people, in terms how you do good things. You have to be the best version of your personality as a human being, and that is according to Aristotle. Aristotle says there are two kinds of virtue. The one is moral virtue. Moral virtue have to do with excellence, performance, decision relating to moral and practical activity. Moral virtue arises from habitual practices or ethos. The one is intellectual virtue, have to do with one's capacity to harness reasons, contemplative capacity for arriving at knowledge. Intellectual virtue owes its existence and development to teaching. So, that is two kinds of virtues. The one is moral virtues, wherein is all about the excellence of the performance in terms of decision making, which is related to you being morality. The next one is all about the knowledge, your ability to reason, to arrive to the certain knowledge, to arrive to certain decision, because you're using your mind, you're using your intellect. It's all about thinking what is good, while the other one is all about your performance. Aristotle explained in the beginning of his book, for him, virtue, then, is twofold, intellectual and moral, both the coming into being and increased intellectual virtue result mostly from teaching, and that is for Aristotle. Everything that we learn in terms of the knowledge, it came from teaching, it came from learning. Hence, it requires experience and time, whereas moral virtue got its name by a slight alteration of the term habit, ethos. It is also clear that none of the moral virtue are present in us by nature, since nothing exists by nature is habituated to be other that it is. So that's the difference between moral and intellectual virtue. So when we say moral, it's all about doing it in excellent way, in the best possible way, in terms of doing good things. While for the intellectual virtues is all about capacity to think critically and of course arriving in knowledge based on the things that you know. So that is for intellectual virtues. Aristotle emphasizes the role of practice and habit in the formation of formal virtue. No person is born morally virtuous. However, all persons have latent potentiality to be so if they only habitually do excellent deeds. So according to Aristotle, all you have to do is to keep practicing. Make it a habit doing good things, and basically, you will be that kind person which is the best version of your personality that you have. So that is for Aristotle. You have to do it again and again, every single day, every time that has an opportunity to do good things. It is only practice that we come to know that we truly know how to do something. It is only in running that we know how fast we can actually run and gain the right to call ourselves runners. It is in trying to solve math problems do we find out if we are good in mathematics and have the capacity to be mathematicians. Aristotle declares that we become morally virtuous by doing morally virtuous acts. We became just by just doing acts. We became based in our action. So according to Aristotle, if you wanna be someone that you wanna be, you have to do something that you never done before. You have to do it. You have to try to do something to know if you can make it or not. You have to be there doing the action. Action and habituation, according to Aristotle, is the ground of moral virtue. It is the state of character that enables a person to fulfill his or her proper function as a human being, to do appropriate response to the demands of the situations. So if you really care about your moral virtue as a person, you have to make sure that they can sense your action. They can see it every time with your personality. And what is according to Aristotle, it should be there in your personality. The people around you should be witness what kind of person are you based in your action. Virtue is a state of character which makes a person good and capable of fulfilling or his and her end or telos as a human person. Aristotle emphasizes a certain constancy or consistency in one's character in facing different situations. Consistency is not stagnancy. That a virtuous person incapable of adjusting to a various situation. On the contrary, it is precisely the person's capacity to read situation that makes him or her virtue. In reading situation, the virtue is able to arrive at a decision or perform an action that may be considered as an intermediate between deficiency and excess, which he calls the mean or mesotes. So according to Aristotle, you have to make sure that use your mind to decide and to come up with a very good decision based on your good morality, based on what you think is right. And even though sometimes there are some instances it's hard to decide in somehow, but we have to ability to think what is good and what is right. For example, you will meet with your friends, you don't need to go so early, you might be bored or irritated, and you are expecting that your friend will go early rather than you, and also you don't have to go late. You just need to arrive in enough time. Let's say you have to meet at 9 a.m. You don't need to go at 6 a.m. because you are so exaggerated. You will be bored and irritated because you waited so long, just like if you are late. So being inadequate and too much are just same, which is not good. So in between deficiency and excess or inadequate, it is what we call mean or mesotest.
So, virtue ethics is the philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. It is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. This character-based approach to morality assumes that we acquire virtue through practice. By practicing being honest, brave, just, generous, and so on, a person develops an honorable and moral character can considered to be as a virtue person. So according to Aristotle, be, by honing virtuous habits, people will likely make the right choice when faced with ethical challenges. To illustrate the difference among three key moral philosophies, like for example, ethicists Mark White and Robert Arp refer to the film The Dark Knight, where Batman has the opportunity to kill the Joker. Utilitarians, White and Arp suggest, will endorse killing the Joker. By taking this one life, Batman could save multitudes. Deontologists, on the other hand, will reject the killing the Joker because it's wrong to kill. But a virtue ethicist would highlight the character of the person who kills the Joker. Does Batman want to be the kind of person who takes his enemies' lives? Definitely no. In fact, he doesn't. So, virtue ethics help us understand what it means to be a virtuous human being. And it gives us a guide for living life without giving us specific rules for resolving ethical dilemmas. So, that could be all about virtue ethics. Thank you.
So, morning, I'm Alamer Amiba. I'm discussing my topic about virtue.
Truly virtuous action is performed by someone who is not simply compelled to do so. These choices come from a certain firmness of influence by a certain factor in given situation. Ang totoong virtue action ay pinaperform by someone is given by heartily. Ginagawa niya ito kusa. A virtuous person, someone who has been used to acting virtuously, that tremendously difficult for anything and anyone to convince him or her to act. Bali daw, ang isang banal na tao ay isang taong nasanay ng kumilos ng may kabanalan na napakahirap para sa anumang bagay at sino man na kumbinsihin siya na kumilos. Ethos. A truly virtuous person can only perform a truly virtuous action. Bale, ang isang mabait na tao lamang ang makakagawa ng tunay na mabubuting kilos. Aristotle. The main function of intellectual virtues, namely, a virtues actively most defining attributes, virtuous activities, fulfillment other than desire to do it, practical virtues such as courage and temperance need specific conditions to be attained. For him, contemplation is an act that can be loved for its own sake because it has no other aim than to reveal the most fundamental truths. Practice of virtue is having a virtuous or excellent character. Eudaimonia is an activity of the soul that purposefully attempt to choose the mean between two extremes in the realm of morality. Aristotle teaches us that character is the most component of ethics, combination of practice wisdom, phronesis, and habitation. Minnesota being ethical is all about being excellent in being human. Both philosophers emphasize the role of reason in guiding moral behavior, but Aquinas believed that virtue attainment is not in the end of itself, but only a means to the ultimate end of man.